Hey, how's it going everyone, and welcome back to another video on the Infinite Tech YouTube channel. And in this video we're going to be doing a review of the Moto G5 Plus, which is arguably one of the best budget smartphones out, under $300 right now. It comes in two different variants, and right here I have the 32GB 2GB variant, and I wasn't able to get my hands on the 64GB 4GB variant. But let's see if this phone is worth it for the $200 it's worth, and let's see if it still holds the crown as the budget king. So without any further ado guys, let's get started with the video. Starting off the video, let's take a look around the device and see what it's made of. Now it is made of a unibody metal design, which does mean it does not have a removable back, but it does feel very nice in the hand. It is a great step up from the plastic back from the previous model, but it's all up to you guys if you prefer the removable back and the plastic cover, or the better build quality and the non-removable back. One thing that there is though is there is a micro SD card slot at the top, as well as a SIM card tray, so it does support expandable storage up to 256GB. This is really good if you're a big photo shooter or you just like taking photos and need a lot of stuff to store on your phone. The expandable storage is a great way to do that. Now other than that, to the top of the device, like I said, we do have a micro SD card tray and a SIM card slot. This does take a nano SIM card. To the back, we have a 13 megapixel rear camera with a dual tone LED flash. To the top of the back, we do have a small noise cancelling microphone. And then we do have the Motorola logo below the camera, but they did remove the dimple, which is kind of unfortunate since I really liked it, and it was a natural resting place for the finger on the phone. Now moving to the front of the device, we do have a single front firing speaker, which is really nice because it's a good thing that they didn't locate it at the bottom of the device, as it's easily muffled by the hand when you're holding the device in landscape mode. The speaker is decent, it's kind of tinny at louder volumes, but it does get pretty loud, and I'd say it's pretty decent for the price. Now we also do have a 5 megapixel front facing camera, which does take some decent photos, but I'll get into all of this later in the video. Now along with this, to the bottom we do have a micro USB port. I would have liked to have seen USB-C, but micro USB port is fine since this phone is only about $250. And then we do also have a noise cancelling microphone and a headphone jack, which is a nice thing to see as their flagship models like the Moto Z don't have it. But pretty much Motorola has pretty much carried out the same design language through their flagship to the Moto G. This does look very similar to the Moto Z, as you guys can tell. It's just that it doesn't have the 3 pins at the bottom for the mod attachments. But one thing that I do have to complain about is that there is a bump on the camera, so it doesn't lie very flat on a table. But unlike in the Moto Z, the bump on the camera had a purpose, but in this phone it's just kind of there, and I think they could have recessed it and made it flat with the body. But nonetheless, it's still very good looking and feeling phone in the hand. Now moving on to the performance and specification of the phone, it does have a Qualcomm Snapdragon 625 chip with 2GB of RAM for the 32GB variant, but it does come with 4GB of RAM for the 64GB variant, and I'll just explain briefly later in the video how that affects the performance of the phone. Now it also does come with an Adreno 505 for those who like gaming, and I must say this thing games pretty well since it's only a 1080p resolution screen. It is a 5.2-inch LCD display at 1920 by 1080p, so it is a Full HD display, and I can tell why they did that since it's a budget phone and it does look very good. Colors are very sharp and pretty accurate, and you can also change the screen settings in the settings if you want a little punchier or more vibrant display, or you want standard and more natural colors. So I do have to say the one-handed use with this phone is a lot easier since they didn't opt for a 5.5-inch display, but rather toned it down to a 5.2-inch display. It's more pocketable, it's easier to use for people especially with small hands, and it just has a more ergonomic feel to it. Now other than that, the OS of this phone is very stock-like. It does have small aspects of the Google Pixel launcher, such as the swipe up to access the app drawer, and to the very bottom below the screen there is also a home button that is very interesting, and I'll talk about that in a sec. Now what you can do with the home button is that you can either have the stock buttons for the back, home, and recent app keys on the screen itself, or you can program them all to the home button itself. So you can do this in the Moto Assist setting, which is an app built into the phone. And what you can do is that for the first, if you just tap the home button once, it'll go home. If you swipe to the right, it'll go back. If you swipe to the left, you can actually access your recent apps. And if you hold down the home button, it'll unlock the phone. and if you hold it down for 2 vibrations, it'll launch the Google Assistant. Now you can also configure whether you want to swipe right to go back, or swipe left to go back, or swipe right to go to the recent apps, or swipe left to go to the recent apps. But I think this was a very great feature to add in the phone, and it's amazing that they could actually figure out this technology into the home button to help do this, and just frees up more screen real estate so you can have a better viewing and watching experience. And personally, I think it's very convenient and I really like it. So as you guys can probably tell, the home button also doubles as the fingerprint scanner, which works very well. It's very fast, very responsive, and overall it just works really well with the phone, especially for 250 bucks. More phones are starting to see fingerprint scanners in this price point, which was at one point a very premium feature only on the latest and flagship phones. So guys, now we can talk about the camera, and I must say the camera is pretty good for the price. If you have good lighting, the camera takes pretty good photos with nice sharpness. It can blow out the highlights sometimes, but there is also a manual mode for you guys who like to fine-tune your shots or are just really into photography. But the camera does really slow down when you get into low light situations. There's a lot more noise as to turn up the ISO, and it's just really grainy and you can't really see much. But for 250 bucks, I must say the camera on this phone is pretty darn good. Now to the front, you also do have a 5 megapixel front facing camera that's decent. It's good for a quick shot, but I wouldn't recommend anything more than that. If you want to just take a quick shot with friends, it's more than enough for that. Now finally guys, performance on this phone is actually incredible. It's so good, especially for only with 2 gigabytes of RAM and 32 GB. I haven't run into any hiccups so far. The OS moves really smoothly. It's almost stock Android. There's pretty much no bloatware as I can tell, just like one Moto Assist app, but there might be bloatware if you get it locked with a certain carrier. From my experience, the 2 gigabytes of RAM is plenty enough for multitasking, opening apps, or doing anything like that. If you do need the 4 gigabytes of RAM, you can upgrade to the 64 GB variant, which isn't that much more, and I'd recommend waiting for it to come on a deal. But for me, the 32 gigabyte and 2 GB RAM variant is more than enough, and since I'm a pretty light user and don't need much, it handles multitasking, games, and everyday usage pretty well. So now guys, let's move on to the final part of this phone, which is the battery life. And I must say, I am very impressed. I easily get 2 days out of this phone. Over the weekend, I use it quite heavily, and I can still get through the first day with at least 40 to 50% left, and the second day, I have to charge it overnight. But on school days, I can leave this thing out for like 2 days. It'll only finish with like 30-40% maybe, and I just recharge it then. So very convenient and very good battery life. In fact, it does have a decent sized battery coming in at 2,800 milliamps, which is slightly smaller than other batteries, but it does work very well and it's well optimized, and it does last for a good amount of time. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys like the new camera rig and setup. I'd really spent some time making this and upgrading my camera for you guys to give you guys better content in my videos. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.